Hi, it's Michelle, and today I have Beth Syverson. Did I say it right?
Yep.
Awesome. And Beth runs a podcast called Safe Home Podcast. And she's a mom, wife, musician, and as of 2021, a podcaster, activist, and a public speaker. You sound like me. Since 2019, her son Joey has struggled with addiction to substances. Plus, he has a serious mental health issue. For the first year of that roller coaster ride, she and Joey were both derailed. Beth tried to fix Joey, and her Supermom cape was tied on tight. But when nothing worked to fix him, she sought help for herself, which improved her own life and her relationship with her wife, Jan, and Joey. She and Joey created Safe Home Podcasts in August of 2021 with the purpose of helping other families avoid some of the pain they've experienced. So, um, welcome. Let's see. Here's a quote from you. Pain that's not transformed gets transmitted. We are trying to transform our pain into practical guidance for other families with struggling teens. Oh, wow. We really need that. So, welcome,
Thank
Beth.
you so much, Michelle. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it is totally my pleasure and the pleasure of those who are listening right now. So, can you tell us a little bit about your story and what prompted you to start this?
Yeah, so I had no idea that Joey was having any sort of problem for like 2 years until we landed in the psych hospital after an attempt on his suicide attempt. And it was a very big wake up call. The day after, the doctor, told us about the blood work that showed that he had many different types of substances in his system. And we're like, what? I mean, I didn't even know he was smoking
Wow.
weed or vaping at all. He was very
How old was
frustrated.
he at that point?
15.
50. And
Yeah. So he
and
started around 13, we think.
and where do you live, Beth?
We live in Southern California.
Okay. So what prompted you then to even get him? Oh, his attempt at suicide.
Yeah,
So
so
prior
then
to that, you
automatically
had
here.
no
No
knowledge that
idea.
he was not feeling well with anything that was going on in his life. Wow. And
Yeah, he lived with his dad half the time. So, and his
oh,
dad let him use drugs. His dad knew about it, was supplying them for him. And so he was just using mostly at his dad's, but he did sneak it here too. But he was just very sneaky, very good at hiding stuff. And I thought he was solid and kind of slept a lot and kind of was separating. But I thought, well, that's what adolescents do. They separate from their parents. And I just thought that was normal. He's our only kid. And I didn't know.
yeah.
I didn't know what to compare it to. So,
Okay. So when he went into the hospital, and how did you handle it going forward then? Like, take us there because you were flabbergasted. You were like,
yeah.
wait, what?
Yeah, it
And,
was a really, really bad.
where do you go from there?
It was really, really a tough day for sure. It just came out of nowhere. But I decided, like, on the way to the hospital, that I could not keep this a secret. I had to tell, and at that point, I didn't even know about the substances, but I'm like, I need help. I need some people to walk with me through this. This is way too big for me. So we started a Caring Bridge page. Are you familiar with Caring Bridge?
Yeah, I am
Yeah. It was very helpful. I did a
cathartic
bunch of
to,
writing on there, and people were so, they really came through for us for a long time on that. So, and I, even after we found out that he had, an issue with substances, we just told everybody about that too. And Joey was on board with it. He's like, Mom, I have no F's left to give, so whatever. So,
wow.
and he really, even from the beginning, he says, Mom, if my story can help somebody else, that that will be a lot better than just making us in pain. So,
Yeah, like it brings purpose to his pain.
yeah,
So how
yes.
old is he now?
He's 18
Okay.
and he's had several weeks at a time of recovery. And then he relapses again because he goes back to his dad's
Oh,
where it's super easy to use. and he doesn't make him pay rent or, do anything. So it's a very tough thing. We can't really compete with that at all. So, but he's trying to reduce his usage, and he's using as much harm reduction skills as he can.
Yeah. Does he want to go to his dad's?
Well, not kind of. Part of him, it's like the devil on one shoulder and the
Yeah.
angel on the other. He knows that his dad is emotionally abusive. He knows it's going to be literally impossible to be sober living there. And yet, the substance user
Yeah.
part of him is like, well, dang it, this is super easy. Why not
Right.
just stay here? So he's got a big battle on his hands, and I've realized that I can't do anything about that. He's going to have to figure out some way. Unfortunately, it's incredibly expensive to get an apartment or anything around here. It's like $2,000 for one bedroom around here. So I don't, it's going to be hard for him to get out of his dad's house,
Yeah.
on his own, but that's kind of the situation he's in right now. So
So are there sober living options?
there are, he's not interested in being sober at this point, but
Okay.
if he ever is, we've told him we would help him get into a sober living, like pay for the first month or the whatever fees to get in. I'm particularly interested in the Oxford House model. Are you familiar with the Oxford
A
House?
little bit. Yeah. I heard about one in our area once upon a time. I don't know if we still have it though. And somebody
Hmm.
said they wanted to recover. They were recovering from substance use disorder, and he was all about bringing the Oxford House. But will you tell us a little bit about that so others know?
Yeah, just a little bit what I know, but go Google them, Oxford House. But it's I think, a global thing. But the thing about it is that each house is owned and operated by the people who live in it. So it's not a commercial thing. It's a nonprofit, and it's because there's a lot of sober living places that kind of just take your money and don't care what your kid does at the place. So this place, it's all about everybody is responsible for their own stuff. They all share the rent, which tends to be a lot less than other sober livings that are for profit. So it seemed,
Wow.
and you're accountable to each other. They all have to vote to let you in. And yeah, if you screw up, you're out. It's pretty strict, at least for most. I think each house is different, but so you have to be careful. But from what I've seen, it sounds a lot better than just paying somebody money and they try to babysit your kid, but you don't have any idea what kind of control they have.
Yeah. Our son and daughter-in-law were in a type of arrangement in Florida near the end of their year recovery.
Mhm.
And it was horrible. It was just an
Mhm.
awful situation. And I think it was that moment in their lives where it was like, we're sober, now what? Like we can't dig out of this hole.
Yeah.
We don't know where to live. It's too expensive. We're working just to pay the rent. And
Mhm.
there were more and more people coming to that sober living who were not, he said at the end, they were like hooked on oh golly, the things that pump you up. What
Oh, steroids?
Yes, steroids.
Oh, wow.
And they were doing tattoos in the house,
Oh, jeez.
and it was him and his wife, and they had this little corner of the house, and so they had more than everybody else, and the police were starting to get called. They were so worried because they had probation officers. I mean, they were really trying
Oh,
to
wow.
earn their way. Anyway,
Yeah.
so I love the concept of Oxford House, and thank you for sharing that because it helps them take that baby step into responsibility
Yeah.
and at least seeing a way out of
Yeah.
the dark hole. And
Exactly.
what a great concept. Yeah, I'll have to
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. I'll have to research that a little
Yep.
more. So I I really liked having you here because so much of what I do is with adult, you know, parents who have adult children,
Mhm.
many of whom already have um, like guardianship of their grandkids, right?
Right, right, right.
But your specialty is more the younger and those who are adopted.
Yeah.
So can you tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so my son, we adopted my son when he was a baby, 7 months old, from Japan. And at the time, I just thought, okay, he won't know the difference. He's too young to know anything, and we'll just have our little life over here. And we did, and it was fabulous, mostly, except for I divorced his dad at 4 when Joey was 4, which kind of compounded all of the problems. But Joey was really quote unquote fine until he hit adolescence. And then he was getting teased a lot because he's Asian and he was in a really white neighborhood, and the bunch of racist people were teasing him every day. And he was just struggling with his identity, and a lot of stuff was coming up for him. And so he went to substances, and then everything sort of fell apart. But we identified, it took us a little while to figure it out, but another adoptee friend of mine said, hey, isn't Joey adopted? You might want to look into adoption trauma or relinquishment trauma. So we went down that road, and luckily it was before COVID, because he was able to get in some teen adoption groups and some adoption therapy from an adoption therapist, and it really opened our eyes. And I did too. I took some therapy from her too. Open our eyes to like, oh, okay, you can't just take a baby away and just expect it to be just totally fine. There's going to be some attachment issues no matter what, because you're taking a child away from their biology, and for in his case also his heritage and his language and everything. So we identified that as being kind of his core issue, that and the divorce. And so we're trying to help Joey deal with these deep, deep issues that most grown-ups don't even want to get anywhere close to.
Yeah.
But my son is so wise, and I think he's an old soul, and he's doing the work of going into that tender spot and figuring out how to find healing for that relinquishment trauma. And it is helping him to kind of crawl out of this hole that has been created from the substances. But I think it's important for people to realize that usually the substance is not really the problem. It's usually a symptom
Sure.
of some other problem, maybe mental health issues, maybe some sort of trauma,
Yeah.
attachment issue, something. They're looking
Wow.
for something. So that's what we figured out is primarily is his issue is the relinquishment trauma.
Relinquishment, relinquishment trauma. Very interesting. I wonder, and maybe you just touched on this for a minute, if there was support groups for other adopted children or adults, young adults, who were from different ethnicities, so that they could talk openly and be like, oh, me too, and
Yeah,
me
me too.
too,
Yeah,
you
me too.
know.
Oh, yeah, I feel that. Yeah, he had that for a couple of times, and then COVID hit, and then they did discontinue them, sadly. But it certainly, I think, could be done in real life. I mean, on Zoom. It doesn't have to be in real life. It could be on Zoom. And I know there are groups for adults. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Adoptees Connect, is for adult adoptees, but there's nothing that I know of for adolescent adoptees. But I hope to make one day. I'm
Well,
going.
or encourage him.
Yeah, encourage him when he's sober. Yeah, he would be really great at that to facilitate a group like that. But
And maybe
I'm
to empower him to just plant the idea in his head. You can tell
yeah.
him I said that. He doesn't know me. Well, I was talking to this lady today, and she was saying,
Yeah,
hey, maybe your son could do this, right? Because
yeah,
this new generation, there's going to be the metaverse. And
yeah.
where I imagine this, okay, so I'm just of this creative mind, but imagine those 3D glasses,
Mhm,
and you go into this community with other adoptees,
mhm,
and you're sitting at the circle and everybody's talking about their life experiences,
uh-huh,
right?
mhm,
And you feel connected and you feel understood and not judged,
mhm.
and you didn't even have to leave your home.
Yeah, I know that we need to harness that technology for sure because I think that sense of community and knowing, oh, I'm
Yeah.
not the only one. Isn't that feels good just to know you're not the only one. So I will be pursuing that, but what I am doing right now is I've created a group for adoptive parents,
Okay.
and it's called Aptitude. Like the first two letters are AP, like adoptive parents, aptitude. And it's for parents who are willing to look at the struggles that adoption causes. Adoption is lovely. We all got our family created out of adoption. So, most of it is really fine and happy. But man, there's a dark side to it that just for the adopted person is just really, really, really difficult. So I'm finding groups of adoptive parents that are willing to kind of go there with me.
Yeah. Well, I'm an adoptive parent. I think I told you that. Our youngest, who is 27 now, was in a Russian orphanage
Mm.
till she was 25 months old. And when we adopted her, she was developmentally delayed. She was only 16 pounds. She could hardly walk.
Whoa.
She was just
Oh
very tiny.
my goodness.
But she's real. I mean, she's barely 5 foot and 95 pounds now. And her shoe size is like a 2.5
Oh my
children. So
gosh.
she's petite. But you don't know that. I mean, when you adopt them, you're like, holy
Mhm.
moly, she's really delayed, right?
Oh, okay.
But she still was. But thankfully for us, I don't, we never, I believe that she suffered trauma
Hmm.
because she would be in situations and it was like she would smell something and then she would get really hot and then she would be like, oh, it feels so good. And then run to the bathroom, like maybe she was going to vomit and lay on a cold floor.
Oh. How old was she when she would do that behavior?
Hmm, probably elementary age.
Wow.
And we went to visit her friend one time in a hospital. And I had to take her out of the room and I mean, she practically passed out in my arms.
Wow.
So there was a time when I was in the States and she was in Russia, and they went to measure her because we just wanted to know like how developmentally delayed. And we told them it was just because we wanted to know what kind of clothing to bring. We didn't want to insult anyone.
Mm-hmm.
So they came back and communicated via, email or something at that point and said, no, she had a cold and she was in the hospital. So she wasn't there when they went. Well,
Oh,
in Russia, even when they get a cold, they just send them to the hospital.
whoa.
So you can imagine a toddler, between, I don't know, she was probably just 18 months at the time
Yeah.
in a hospital by
By
herself.
yourself. Oh, yeah.
Now, but she has no, of course, recollection of any of that. She just got married. He adores her.
Mm-hmm.
She asked about, her family. We shared all the information that we had. She never really got that curious about,
Mm-hmm.
and it was this. I used to think that if all my kids, because the older two are biological, and then we adopted her like years later. So there's a 15 years difference and 11 years different.
Oh, wow. Uh-huh.
And um, her her history that we got was that her mom lost guardianship of her own children because of alcoholism. And
Okay.
so we were like, oh,
Yeah.
but that girl, one drink and she was like, oh, she can't really, she's not interested and she can't do
Okay.
it. So,
Hmm.
but never had any, I think, it could surface later, but we've been really blessed. But we always told her, God picked you of all the children in the world for you to be a part of our family. You blessed us too.
Hmm.
And so, not that you didn't tell, your son Joey that, um, but I don't know. It's just weird how some kids it's easier to accept. But I've
Yep.
got to believe, and I bet you know this, what the percentages are of feeling lost versus feeling okay with adoption. I don't know.
I don't know that, but I know that there is a very wide range and everyone deals with it differently. But I do know that there's something like a 40% higher rate of residential treatment centers and suicide attempts and that kind of thing, jail for adopted people. It's an
Wow.
extraordinarily
Hi.
large number. So,
Wow.
and
Wow.
sometimes they might not talk about it or bring it up like, oh man, I wish I knew my birth mother, because it's buried so deeply within
Yeah.
them. Or sometimes, I don't think this is the case with you, but sometimes they don't want to offend their adoptive parents
Right.
by bringing it up.
Sure. Yeah. She said to me one time, I must be like my biological mother because I'm nothing like you. But
Oh,
we laughed about it because it's true.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But
Sounds like you're
yeah.
really open, which is great.
Yeah. So, but okay. So, on your podcast, tell us a little bit more about, do you interview people every week? Is it twice a week? And what can people hope to learn from?
Yeah. So we have a weekly podcast. Joey used to be on it at the very beginning. He was on about 6 or 8 episodes, and then he relapsed. And I said, what do you want me to do with the pod? And he said, I want you to keep it going, Mom, and I want you to talk about relapse. So we have a couple of episodes about relapse, one of which is him in relapse
Oh,
talking to me, which I think is one of my favorite episodes. It's really sad. It's a sad episode, but I think we don't hear from our
yes.
relapsed loved ones that are in addiction, and I think they have a voice that needs to be heard. So, so that one I'm kind of proud of, and maybe help people realize that they still can talk to them. They're still there. They're still humans, and to
Right.
continue to develop that relationship, even if they're not as sober as you wish or whatever.
That's
And
good.
so, yeah, we talk about addiction quite a bit. We also talk about adoption. We talk about mental health, and we talk about diversity. My wife and I are gay, and we are really prominent supporters of LGBTQ people, plus neurodiverse people, and just kind of bringing awareness to all sorts of different kinds of ways to be human. So
Sure.
those are the main topics.
Wow. Wow. Those are heavy. Yeah, heavy. I'm just curious. I have a TED talk coming up October 1st.
Ooh, how
And
cool.
if you applied for a TED talk, what would your TED talk be about? And this is for those listening, I'm just putting her on the spot right now. But
Yeah.
because you have so many passions, like what would it be about?
I think, and I would love to do a TED talk. It's kind of on my big bucket list. I would love to do a TED talk about how to have a positive relationship with your child, even when
Even
dot dot
when?
dot.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm hoping that you can find value in mine. Mine is how to how to connect to your addicted loved one with peace.
Oh, lovely.
Something like that. I don't know the title if it's in gold yet. So I share the Peace Way to Listen, and it's an
Oh,
acronym, PEAC.
oh.
So it's just really about actively listening
Mhm.
without judging or without trying to fix, and
Mhm.
that kind of thing. But I recently applied for a second one because that's what happens. You start getting motivated and really
Yeah.
say something more. And I
Yeah.
think I think for me, it's now I'm more passionate about the model of care. And
Mhm.
even when you're talking about, Joey, he needs a place to go to. Well, where is that?
Yeah.
Where is the team approach
Yeah.
to this problem? And there isn't, well, it's broken really bad.
It's
And
really tough.
I just can get really fired up about that, in so many different ways. So that would anyway. So I just kind of got off the subject, but it does tell us something about you and where your heart is,
Yeah.
and that is it's so loving to hear you. Even though your son is in active addiction, you're finding ways to connect.
Mhm.
If he had a heart condition, if he had diabetes,
Exactly.
you would be right there with him. And if he chose to have a candy bar and then take a shot of insulin, or I don't know how all that
Yeah,
works, you know what I
exactly.
mean? Like, we can't control what they
Exactly.
do,
And we
but we're going
wouldn't
to
just
come
shut them
alongside
out then.
and love
Yeah,
them. Yeah.
absolutely. I'm right on same page as you for sure.
Yeah. So any other anything else you'd like to share with us? What's something that most people don't know about you?
Oh gosh. Oh golly. Well, the other half of my life, I'm a musician.
Oh,
That's what I've
yeah.
done my whole life. So this whole podcasting thing is a whole new thing from last year. But yeah, my music life fills me up, and I love. Here's something most people don't know: is I'm a taiko drummer. Picked that up after Joey sort of fell apart, and I needed something for me to create peace for myself. And so I was looking for something Japanese to connect with Joey on, but then he didn't want to do it. So I just kept going and I love it. It's that, with the big arms and the big giant drums and the Japanese drumming. It's
And
so fun.
what did you call it though? Something drumming?
Taiko. Taiko, Taiko.
Taik. I have never heard of that.
Okay, gotta go Google it. It's so fun to watch and even more fun to do.
That's
It's
cool.
very
Where did you
cathartic.
find a teacher? Although you're in Southern California.
I'm in Southern California, where our studio's in Pasadena, where there's quite a large Asian population. So, but usually, if there's a university or any sort of Japanese population, there's usually a taiko company somewhere in the big cities, at least.
So what was your instrument prior to that though? What
Oh, I've been a pianist my whole life, and a
pianist?
singer and a conductor and things like that. So, yeah,
A singer and a conductor?
yeah.
Whoa. Yeah, that's amazing. And so where are you currently doing that?
Yeah, that's my jobs. I teach at a college, and I'm a music director at a church.
Wow. That's fascinating. When I was a 17, 18-year-old, I was going to go to college and become a music therapist, it was
Oh
called.
yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
And my mom was all about it because I was really thinking social work. Um,
Hmm.
and so I got this piano teacher, and he basically told me I was never going to make it because I
Oh,
needed to learn my sonatinas and I needed to do this. And I was like, whoo, I don't know anything. Like it was pretty humbling. And I thought, nah, I can't do it. I don't want to do this. I
yeah.
loved music, but I didn't love it enough to work in it like that.
Uh,
So I ended up with a business degree, but it's interesting because music, it's still a part of my life, not as much as yours. But that's just a part of who we are when we love music that
oh,
way.
definitely. Yes.
But well, thank you so much for taking time with us today. And if people want to find you, can you tell them? And I'll put it in the show notes too. But how do
Sure.
they reach you, Beth?
Our website is safehomefamilies.com, and you can find Safe Home Podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. We also put it on YouTube because some people find it easier to listen on YouTube. And we'd love to hear from you. I'm also on social media: Facebook,
Okay.
Instagram, Twitter.
So your Instagram, what's your Instagram? Oh, I saw you on there. I friended you or I liked you or whatever that is.
However, you do
Safe
it.
home, right?
Yeah, yeah. Safe. Let's see. Oh god, safe underscore home underscore podcast on Instagram.
So I'm just curious where safe home came from. What made you think
Oh,
of that?
Joey and I came up with that name. We were thinking he was a baseball player, and we were trying to think of analogies. Safe at home, that kind of thing. And safe at home was already taken. We're like, well, let's just do safe home. Okay, and it
Okay.
really kind of encompasses who we are because we want our home to be a safe space, like literally safe, harm reduction, that kind of thing, but also safe for everyone to be
Who they
loved
are.
unconditionally and be, seen and nurtured and that kind of thing. So
Right. Awesome. Well, thank you again. And it's been great to have you. God bless.
thank you very much. Thanks, you too. Thank you very much.